Here we are, Psalm lesson 4, and we're looking at 15 through 18, right? Yeah, 15 through 18, Psalm lesson 4. So let's get started. We've got 4 that we need to cover. And I've got to let David in again, sorry. Don't know why that's happening. All right. So let's start with Psalm 15. This is pretty short, easy, to the point. So when we look at Psalm 15, what is the question that is asked in that first verse? Okay, guys, this is like the easiest question of the whole day, right?
I just wrote down who gets to live with God.
Okay, right. Okay. That was almost like the Sunday school answer, Jesus, right? Right. So the question, who gets to live with him? So what is the answer? What do you see as the answer in the rest of that psalm? What is it describing?
The righteous.
The righteous, exactly. Exactly. And then what do the righteous look like?
They walk blamelessly and they do what's right.
Mm-hmm.
Speak the truth.
Sincere hearts.
Do evil to his neighbor.
It's a good list to measure ourselves against. And in your homework, you were to make a list of these characteristics on day 1. I'm going to remind you that if you see a list in the text, you can simply number them. That's what I do. As I'm reading it, I just say number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and then I don't rewrite the list, but it's right there in my text. And what would be the value of numbering them or making a list?
Well, to measure up, maybe to try and measure up.
Mm-hmm. To try and measure up.
Yeah, quick reference.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, if you're paying attention to each one of them, you're going to be more likely to say, oh, yeah, that's me. Oh, that one's not me, but it's easy to skip over some of them if you're just reading it without paying attention to each one in particular. So you looked up some cross references that will help us to understand a little bit more about this righteousness, or who can dwell in the tent, who shall dwell with the Lord. Page 52 and 53. What did you learn that helps us to understand a little bit more about this?
Well, one thing I put down in verse 15 in Hebrews 4, it tells us that Jesus was tempted just like us and yet remained sinless.
Good.
The Hebrews 10, I wrote down the one who perseveres in faith.
Okay, one who perseveres in faith. Anything else you see about this description of the righteous, or the fact that they're the ones who can dwell in the house of the Lord?
I like Hebrews 10, confidence to enter the holy place by Jesus' blood. We have that confidence, we can do it.
Right. We have the confidence to enter.
And then also in verse 23, it says, hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering.
Mm-hmm. Hold fast the confession of our hope. We see in these Psalms, remember, we've seen the contrast between wicked and the righteous. would the wicked have the confidence to enter before God? Would the wicked have that confidence to enter?
Probably not.
No.
Probably not. Absolutely not. They would have confidence to enter to ask for salvation, but this list describes the lifestyle of a righteous person. So it's a good thing to just to measure ourselves up against this and say, how am I doing? You know, how am I doing? Okay, let's look at 16. That first stanza, what is that first stanza about?
David takes refuge in God.
Yeah, David takes refuge in God. It's kind of like a statement of faith. That's the way I looked at it. He said, "Oh God, in you I take refuge. I say to the Lord, you are my Lord. I have no good apart from you." That's his opening statement. And then what do you see in 3 and 4? The next stanza. Do you
Well,
see a contrast here?
I was just going to say that's where they provide a contrast. There's the saints in the land, they are the excellent ones, in whom is all my delight, but the others, the sorrows of those who run after another God, they'll multiply. And their drink offerings of blood I will pour out or take. So there's a contrast there for sure.
Hmm. Right, and how does that relate to the first stanza?
Hello. Hello. You like it here?
Do I like it? Something.
Oh.
Okay, how does it relate to the first stanza of what David is saying about his God?
Well, he's included in the excellent ones, in
Mhm.
whom is all my delight.
Because in 4, he says, I shall not pour out their drink offerings of blood, nor will I take their names upon my lips. And he's talking about those who serve other gods, other idols. So he's kind of making a stance or a statement of where he's at.
Exactly. And like that statement that he made about where he's at is in that first stanza, right? You are my God. I have no good apart from you. And then he contrasts the righteous with the wicked. What about verses 5 and 6? What's the topic of that?
He's obviously in a good place right now.
Mhm.
And the lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. I have a beautiful inheritance. He's
Have a
okay.
beautiful inheritance.
Mhm. And I put that the Lord has my life and my future in his control.
And it's clear it's because of his choice.
Mhm. Right. And the cross references on page 55. What did you see from the book of Joshua about this inheritance?
The Lord, the God of Israel, is their inheritance.
Mhm. So are we talking about land necessarily here? What are we talking about?
No,
We're
I
talking
think
about
it's
land,
because-
because the tribe of Levi, which they mentioned, they didn't get land,
Mhm.
Mhm.
so we're not talking about land.
Yeah. Gabe, were you going to say something? You're muted if you were. Okay, all right. So the Lord is his inheritance. And he says, I have a beautiful inheritance. And we see, I think in the next Psalm, we see the difference too, where people who only have what's here on earth versus the inheritance. What is an inheritance? What do you mean when we're saying this is my inheritance? That wasn't in your lesson, but just think through this.
It's the result of becoming a child of God. We become an heir. We have an inheritance in God when we become his children.
Absolutely. Is that a beautiful inheritance?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, somebody said he feels like he's in a good place here. And definitely, he says, the Lord is my chosen portion. And I think Ron alluded to this, where these good things are happening because of his choices, his choosing to live the right way, to live a righteous lifestyle. So the Lord is my chosen portion. The lines have fallen to me in pleasant places, and indeed I have a beautiful inheritance. And as Joshua said, the Lord is their inheritance. So because of that, in verses 7 through 11, what does David say that he will do and why?
Well, he's going to bless the Lord because it's the Lord who gives him counsel, instructs him in his heart. And he sets the Lord always before him. And because of that, he has the confidence, I will not be shaken.
Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts on that?
He's finding his pleasure in the Lord.
Mm. Look at verse 9. What's that word? First word.
Therefore,
Therefore. Okay. So what are you going to do with that?
Go back.
Go back. Therefore, my heart is glad. So what makes his heart glad?
Because the Lord is always before him.
Hmm? I just want to make sure you don't just bypass that therefore, because it's got to make you stop and ask, what did he say before the therefore? Okay, why is my heart glad? And why and my whole being rejoices, and my flesh also dwells secure? Because of what he said in 7. And I will not be shaken. I'm secure. I will not be shaken. What about the last 2 verses? How's this? What do you see in those 2 verses about how he is seeing his light? There's a contrast. Go ahead.
He's being a prophet here.
Okay.
Knowing, I don't know if God actually told him, but the neat thing is he knows that his inheritance will not die. Well, we see Jesus in this portion.
We do. So let's just jump to those cross references that you looked up about that on page 55 and 56 in Acts and Corinthians.
Well, in Acts, it says God raised him from the dead so that he will never see or never be subject to decay.
And who did he raise from the dead?
Jesus.
Jesus.
Okay. So how does this fit into what David is saying here in this psalm? When he says, "For you will not abandon my soul to Sheol or death, or let your Holy One see corruption."
Gay says it's a bit of a prophecy, really, because
Mhm.
David it
Mhm.
says, would die and go into the grave. But his descendant would not see corruption.
What about 1 Corinthians 15?
Well, in verse 20, it said, our hope is in the risen Lord.
Our hope is in the risen Lord.
And it talks about
So
how
there is that. Go ahead.
With the resurrection, the body will be raised as a glorious, powerful spiritual body.
And if Jesus wasn't raised, our faith is useless and worthless.
Exactly. Corinthians is powerful in that way. If he wasn't raised, then there's nothing. But David is talking about he has a beautiful inheritance, which is that salvation in the Lord and heaven. He's talking about he feels secure in verse 8 and 9. The Lord counsels me. I praise him for what he's done. Because he's at my right hand, I will not be shaken. Therefore, my heart is glad and my whole being rejoices because I know my flesh dwells secure. I will not die. I will not be left in death. So that's that resurrection. And if you flip it over, you can see the continuation of that, where he says, I will not be left in death, but you make known to me the path of life. So here's a contrast again. He's like, you're not going to leave me to die. You're going to show me the path of life. And in your presence, there's fullness of joy. And at your right hand are pleasures forevermore. But this is a foreshadowing of what he's talking about with Jesus. David did die. Jesus didn't. He died, but was raised again. So you see that little prophecy that slipped in here in this psalm. (15) and 16, these psalms have a different feeling than the ones we've looked at previously. Do they not? It's like there's more joy, there's more happiness. It's not all about the wicked. And so you have a whole brighter feeling in these two psalms.
Mhm. There's more confidence.
Mhm. More confidence.
Okay, he'll get back to the rest of it.
Yeah, he'll get back to the rest of it. Yeah, Heather says he'll get back to the rest of it. But let's hold on to these two for now, right? So, I mean, you see his confidence. So what about ours? Where do we get our confidence? What do we learn from David about what brings us joy?
Well, we have the assurance of eternal life.
Inheritance, yeah.
Mhm.
Inheritance, right? Yeah. The lines have fallen for us in pleasant places. And we have a beautiful inheritance. So if we remember that, and then that's where we can feel secure. Can feel secure. And it says, I will not be shaken because he is at my right hand. So take these joyful things and hold on to those. Know what makes David happy, what makes him able to praise the Lord because of what he has done for him. When he says, therefore, my heart is glad. And part of that, if you go back to verse 8, what does David say?
I shall not be shaken. Is that what you're referring to?
And just the half the verse before that.
I know the Lord is always with me. I will not be shaken, for he is right beside me.
And when David says, I have set the Lord always before me. I have set the Lord always before me.
Right. It's like Ron said, choosing the portion, choosing the path, choosing to go the righteous way. There's a lot to be said for that in David.
There is a whole lot to be said for that. Right. Because what have we seen about the wicked up to this point? What happens to the wicked?
Nothing good.
Nothing good.
Yeah.
Nothing good. So choosing the path of righteousness is going to set you on this path where you will not be shaken. God will always be at your right hand because we've seen that he loves the righteous and he judges the wicked. And nothing good comes to the wicked in the end. Okay, so that's the good news. That's the good news. Okay, let's look at chapter 17. Chapter 17. He starts chapter 17 in verses 1 through 5. Let's take a look at those 5 verses. What is he's starting out this psalm like he does a lot of them by requesting that God hears him. Hear me. Hear, what does he say? Hear a just cause. Hear a just cause. Attend to my cry. Give ear to my prayer from lips free of deceit. My lips are free of deceit when I approach you. Let your eyes behold the right. Okay? Look at the rest of the, how is he able to say this? That his lips are free of deceit, that he is just, that he wants vindication because of his rightness. It's
fantastic.
Yeah.
So the Lord has seen.
In those 3, 4, and 5, what do you see as far as like what God has done or what David has done?
I will say he's saying, I've done my part in this. He says, I've purposed that my mouth will not transgress, so I won't lie. I've avoided the ways of the violent, and he's held fast to God's paths, and I haven't slipped.
Again, there's that choice. Choosing to do the right things. And therefore, he's like, therefore, I call on you. Because I know I can dwell in the house of the Lord. The wrong chapter there. Who can approach you in your holy hill? The righteous. Okay. And I'm approaching you now. So in those few verses, it says, you, God, have tried me. You've visited me. You've tested me. And you find nothing wrong. Why not? Because this is what I've done. I have purposed that my mouth will not transgress. I have avoided, I have held fast. Look at those verbs. So in 6 through 12, when he calls upon the Lord, what is he asking?
He's looking to be saved from his enemies now.
What the enemies are back.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, they're back. They're always going to come back.
And he
So what is-
emphasizes again that he calls on the Lord because I know you're going to answer me. You're going to hear me.
Right, right. because I know. Think about your own situations. When you call on the Lord, is that your thought process? I'm going to call on him because I know he will answer.
Yes, it's not always the answer we want, but he always answers.
Hmm. David talks about, I will call on you, for you will answer me. Listen to me, wondrously show your steadfast love. He talks about steadfast love a lot through these Psalms. So David knows the steadfast love of God. And he says, I know you will answer me and protect me. Now protect me from the wicked. What does it say about the wicked?
They close their hearts to pity. They speak arrogantly. And they're
We
set
see
up.
that on the list of, yeah. Did we see those characteristics on the list of the righteous?
No.
Yeah, no.
Another cynical answer.
Right.
Yes.
Yes, right. So what else about the wicked?
There's that lion again.
Oh, the lion shows up again. Right. Lurking, a young lion lurking in ambush, eager to tear. So David is asking for protection. What about the cross references on page 59? When he talks about keep me as the apple of your eye, hide me in the shadow of your wings.
I thought that was interesting, actually. In what Moses was speaking, he talked about he guarded him as the apple of his eye, which I never realized that was an expression from the Bible. Being the apple of
right.
Yeah, you think of it like you're like a dad who loves his little girl. She's the apple of his eye. I never knew that came from the Bible.
It does, and you'll also find it in Proverbs 7. That same phrase is mentioned, but the apple of your eye.
In Psalm 91, it talks about under his wings you will find refuge, and that's when he talked to hide me in the shadow of your wings. That place of protection.
Yeah. What is the word picture that you get from that? Hide me in the shadow of your wings.
Bird.
Like a bird. Yeah. Protection, that safety, right. I think Jesus said that when he was entering Jerusalem, how I longed to, what was it? To gather you like a hen gathers her chicks, that protection. I longed to do that, but you wouldn't let me.
Well, and the wing is also covered with feathers, and Psalm 91 talks about that. The feathers, they're soft. And so there's a, when you wrap yourself in a blanket, a soft blanket, there's that sense of security and freedom and like peace as well that comes with that. So
yeah. So David is going to God for protection, and he knows God will hear him. So how does that then apply to us?
Well, we need to know. I often quote Psalm 46, as I'm sure you do, to people, that God is my strength and refuge, my very present help in trouble. And we need to know that and remember.
Yeah. From the wicked who always keep showing up. Yeah, and so in 13 through 15, so he's going to God. He says, I'm just, you've tried me, you've found nothing wrong. I have purpose to do this and this and this. I am innocent, and therefore I'm asking you to protect me from my enemies. Protect me from my enemies. This is what they're like. Again, he's always describing the wicked. This is what they're like. And then in 13, what does he ask God to actually do?
Confront
And
and
deliver.
Confront. Yeah.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And then he talks in 14 about the people who seem to do well in this life. They're wicked, but that's their portion, really. It's this life. And they seem to do well,
Mhm.
have children and have plenty. But that's it. It's this life.
Yeah, it's all very temporal.
Hmm.
When you say their portion, that word portion, did it make you think of anything else? Yeah. Where did we just see that?
in chapter 16, verse 6,
Right.
David, I have a beautiful inheritance.
Mhm.
Mm.
This is my portion. In verse 5, the Lord is my chosen portion. And what is their portion? They've
Now.
chosen the things of the world. Right.
Job makes that point, doesn't he? That other people do well. It's not just the wicked. The wicked can do
Yeah.
very well. Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, we see it all the time, but then in the end, what do they have? What do they have?
No inheritance.
Yeah. See, what do they do with their inheritance?
Give it to their children.
Yeah. Yeah. They just keep passing that along, but it's just worldly things.
Right.
And how does David contrast that with what his inheritance is?
I shall behold your face.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For me, I shall behold your face in righteousness. There that is again. When I awake, I shall be satisfied with your likeness. That's my beautiful inheritance. That's what I have. And that's all I need.
And
That's
it's
all I need.
eternal. It's not temporal, it's eternal. I mean, how do you compare, our finite lifespan to something, to eternity? It's nothing.
Mhm.
We have so much more to be looking forward to.
So what is it that we should be passing on to our children?
The things of God.
Our faith, yes.
Right. So we can clearly see the difference. Here. So we want to pass on a beautiful inheritance, not just the things of earth. Because when we die, that's what we have, the beautiful inheritance of eternal life. So if you had nothing here on earth, if you had no possessions, but you had faith, is that enough? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Good. Okay, let's look at 18. This is the long one, but it's okay because we're just going to chunk it up and deal with it in portions. But to start with, I want you to look at the introduction to it. And what is this psalm about?
The day the Lord delivered David from his enemies.
Mhm. Including who?
So
Oh,
Including Saul. Okay. And you were to look up 2 Samuel 7, verse 1. or 17, verse 1.
Oh, yeah.
No, 7:1, sorry, 7:1. So what does that say in 2 Samuel?
It says, after the king was settled in his palace and the Lord had given him rest from all his enemies around him.
Okay. So historically, that's Samuel. That's where we see it historically when he was free from all the enemies around him. And we know that Saul was pursuing him and pursuing him and pursuing him. And the Lord delivered him from all the enemies, including Saul. And then how does he start this? This is so awesome. Yeah. What are the descriptions that he uses for who God is at this point in this victory song?
He's his rock and his fortress and his deliverer, in whom I take refuge.
Mhm.
My shield, the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. And then he says, he's worthy to be praised.
Yeah. Worthy to be praised. I am saved from my enemies. Hey, there's a song in there, right? Yeah, right. Yeah, there's a song in there. Yeah, yeah, right. If you were to look at that list, and again, I numbered them, see all of these words that describe how David is describing God. Any of those words jump out at you as like, this is who God is to me.
I think the different times of our lives when we need specific descriptions, we can say deliverer of pain, deliverer of cancer, my rock when I feel like my life is falling apart, my stronghold as he holds my hand through it all. I think we could describe each moment that we've had and where we can say these are his characteristics of him caring for me.
You have a lot of agreement here on that, okay? He is all of those things at different times.
Mhm.
And how does David then describe his condition before he was rescued? Where was he in life? In 4 through 6.
Surrounded by the ungodly. It sounds like he was facing death.
It sounds like he was at death's door.
Yeah.
Really close.
Yeah, at death's door. And at death's door, what did he do? In verse 6.
Called upon the
Cried for help.
Yeah. Yeah. Cried for help. Did God hear him?
And he cries out for help because he knows the Lord will hear him.
Right.
This is not a guessing game. He knows the Lord hears him.
Yeah.
Like somebody said, we may not get the answer that we want, but he does hear an answer.
Yeah. Yeah. We have seen that in all the Psalms we've looked at before him, that God sees and he hears. He sees and he hears. He sees the afflicted. He sees that. And when we cry out, he hears. It says, from his temple, he heard my voice, and my cry to him reached his ears. He heard me. He will hear us. So there's no reason not to cry out. When we looked at 17, when he said, hear my just cause, hear a just cause from lips that are free of deceit. So if we are living that righteous lifestyle, we know that God will hear us. We know that he loves the righteous. So there's no reason not to cry out because he will hear. And in fact, David says he did hear. And then 17 through 19 tell us about the answer.
He was rescued.
He was rescued. What verse is that, Carol?
17 is the first place. It's
Okay.
mentioned in 17 and 19.
Yeah, in 17 and 19, he says he rescued me from my strong enemy. And in 19, he rescued me. Why?
Because he delighted in me.
Yeah. Because he delighted in me. Why did he delight in David? Okay,
Because
you're
I was
muted.
righteous.
Sorry?
Because I was righteous. I was.
Right. Because of his faithful, righteous lifestyle and continued dependence on God. So, yeah, I loved those verses when he said he rescued me because he delighted in me. What about that description of how he rescued him? Just in general, we're not going to go through it, but what is this? Oh, in verse 7, then the earth reeled and rocked, the foundations also of the mountains trembled and quaked. Why?
Because he was angry.
He was angry. Because he was angry. Okay, so why was he angry?
God's wrath is on the wicked.
Mm-hmm. Right. And what was David crying out about?
His powerful enemies that were surrounding him.
Right. And so God sees that. Remember, we see he sees how the righteous are being treated. And it makes him angry. So he's going to rescue them. Look at that description. What do you see just generally? How that rescue is described?
It sounds like an earthquake or a volcano eruption or something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It shows his power in nature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Definitely. If you look through that whole list, you'll see a lot of references to nature, his power in nature. Have we seen that before in any other places in scripture? It's not in your homework, but can you think of any other times when you would see something like this?
Well, when was it Elijah on the mountain when he asked to hear from God and God came and he wasn't in the wind and he wasn't in the, but then he was in the whisper, but all of those other things were examples of
Yeah. God shows up.
Power.
He shows up in nature.
The parting of the Red Sea was a
Yeah,
huge
that's what I was thinking of.
nature event.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and back in the days of the wilderness, when Korah defied Moses,
Mm-hmm.
earth opened up and swallowed up Korah and his whole family, and his followers.
Right.
You think of Sodom and Gomorrah. I mean, he
Right.
utterly destroyed those cities.
Why do you think that is, that nature is used like this?
It reminds us that God is the God of everything. We talk about Mother Nature, but God created her.
Yeah, right.
Well, and it's something too that we can relate to because we've seen it. We've seen tornadoes, we've seen the thunder and the lightning and the wind and the damage that those things can do, the power behind it. You know, so we can relate God's power to some of those physical things that we have seen. And maybe it gives us a visual reminder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I love. I was thinking that because how else are we going to see God?
Right.
Are you going to actually see him? No, but you're going to see his power displayed
Right.
in these acts of nature. And then you see the hand of God working. Good. Okay, let's look at we talked about verses 16 to 19 and what they describe the rescue. Just want to spend a little bit more time right there because 16 through 19, just he sent from on high and he took me. He drew me out of many waters. He pulled him out. He rescued me from my strong enemy and from those who hated me. Why? What does it say next?
They were too mighty for me. They weren't too mighty for God, but they were too mighty for David.
Right. Right. I couldn't do it myself. I couldn't do it myself, but God did it. And why did he do it?
He delighted in me.
Yeah, he delighted in me. Okay. So put yourself in that situation. Are you, when you're in a really desperate situation, can you get yourself out of it?
Not usually.
Mm.
No.
Just yourself.
First thing we have to do is acknowledge our own weakness, though. When we try to do things on our own, we need to acknowledge our weakness. And when we do that, then we're in a position to call upon the Lord.
Mhm. Yeah. And David knows he can't rescue himself. So he calls upon the Lord because he knows he can. And he does. And he does. So I loved that where he said, I could not have done this myself. And a lot of times we think we can, and we try, but we can't always do it. So he rescued me because he delighted in me. And look at the next verse.
Mhm.
He dealt with me how?
According to my righteousness and according to the cleanness of my hands, he rewarded me, which kind of goes against how we look at things now, because we don't feel like anything we do earns, like it almost sounds like he's earning God's help and love, and now we can't earn it. Like it's only because of Jesus. You know what I mean? I don't know
I
if that
think
makes
so.
Well, it's hard for us, I find, to call ourselves righteous.
Exactly, right.
According to Paul, we're saints, according
Right.
to Paul.
Mhm.
And you
Yeah.
think it's really hard. But apparently we are, if we're trying to follow.
Mhm.
Well, and the thing that I think we have to keep in mind here is this contrast between the righteous and the wicked. It says he rewarded me according to the cleanness of my hands. What do we see about the wicked in the past? Like, what's the reward for the wicked? Reward the wicked.
The wages of sin is death.
Mhm. Yeah. So God's scale of judgment here, or rewards, okay, is the righteous are blessed. We go right back to chapter 1. The righteous are blessed and the wicked are destroyed. So here, when he's rescuing David, what is he seeing about David? He's seeing his righteousness. And he's rewarding that, blessing him for that. And if you follow through these next few verses, David describes the cleanness of his hands. Why? What does he say he has done that would show the cleanness of his hands or show his righteousness?
Kept the ways of the Lord.
He didn't disregard God's statutes.
Mm-hmm. What else? Go back to verse 21. I have kept the ways of the Lord and have not wickedly departed from God. So there's that standard again. The wicked versus the righteous.
Mhm.
And verse 24, so that's like a therefore. Okay, that's like a therefore. Because of that, the Lord has rewarded me according to my righteousness. And then he goes on to say in 25 and 26, how does God work? How does he work?
He shows mercy.
To who?
To those who are merciful, and he shows himself blameless to a person who is blameless, and pure to those who are pure. He reflects what we live, I guess.
Okay. Yeah.
Because then the crooked, you make yourself seem torturous. So it goes both ways.
Again, it said righteous versus the wicked.
Yeah.
In verse 28, 28 through 36, 28 through 36, what is he describing?
How the Lord took care of him and equipped him and brought him through so he could fight sport.
When you look at those words where he says, in 28, you light my lamp, you light my darkness. By you, I can run against a troop. You see this preparing for battle kind of a thing going on here. I can leap over a wall because of God. He's a shield. I can take refuge in him. And who is a rock except God? And in 31 and 32, you equipped me with strength. You made my way blameless. You made my feet like the feet of deer and set me secure on the heights. Trains my hands for war. I can bend a bow of bronze. You've given me a shield of your salvation. Your right hand supported me. You made me great. You gave me a wide place for my steps under me, and my feet did not slip. So there's that picture of God preparing him for his battle, giving him the strength and the ability to fight, to fight his enemies. And then if you look at 37 through 45, what does David do with that strength? With that preparation? What does he do?
He fought back.
He fought back.
Pursued his enemies, and because he'd been equipped with strength for battle, the enemies turned their backs to him. Well, I beat them fine as dust.
I beat them fine as dust. Yeah. I cast them out like mire of the streets. So David is able to, through the strength of the Lord, defeat his enemies. As are we. As are we. What about 43 through 45?
It
What
seems
is
God's raising David to new heights here.
Placed him as a head of the nations.
We know David is king, or he has been designated to be king, right? And so God has now restored him. Saul's been chasing him. He's been run out of town. And now God is restoring him. And then it ends with the same thing it starts with. So look at those verses, 46 through 50.
Praise.
Praise. Praise. It says, therefore, because of that, because you equipped me, because I defeated my enemies, therefore I will praise you. And again, here's this, you could have a tendency to say, I did this.
Yes.
David could say, look, I pounded them into dust. I did that. But what does he say?
It was God.
Yeah, thanks God. I will praise you because of what you did. For this I will praise you among the nations. I will sing to your name, great salvation he brings to his king, and show steadfast love, there it is again, to his anointed, to David and his offspring forever. This is a great song of victory. And David is totally rejoicing.
Is that a pointer to Jesus, the last verse?
Right,
David and his offspring?
right. I believe so. David and his offspring forever. David will always have someone to sit on the throne, and then right straight through to Jesus. So there you have that. Okay. What's a good takeaway from this? This was a long song, but there's some good things in here.
Remember to give God the glory.
Yeah, remember to give God the glory. First of all, remember to call on him. Call on him. He will hear you. Understand you can't do it by yourself, but he can with all that power, and then give him the glory. Don't say, look what I did. Any other comments, observations?
When I read all this, I'm glad I was born in a time of after Jesus, not pre-Jesus.
Yes.
Because I don't know, David was able, he was able to, and he didn't always, though. I mean, he had his failings too. And I'm just grateful that our faith in Jesus is accounted to us as righteousness. It's not because we kept all these stitches. I'd have a hard time doing all that. So I'm thankful I came around after Jesus, and
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah, I'm with you, Dave. Yeah.
my faith in him makes me righteous, not anything I do.
Yes. And because of our faith in him, we choose to be righteous as well. We choose to obey. We choose to walk that path. We choose him as our portion. And we have a beautiful inheritance. Good. So we will finish this part 1 next week with it goes up through, it's 19 through 22. 22 is that description of Jesus that we see. I know that is crucifixion description, right? The Good Friday thing. So enjoy that when you get to that, and look for all of the signs that they're talking about Jesus, right? So next week will be our last week, and we'll end with chapter 22.